The air in the living room felt so suffocating I could clearly hear impatient fingers tapping the glass table. My name is Kelsey, and I am 32 years old. My parents had just announced their month-long European vacation while casually sliding a massive list of chores across the table for me. They simply demanded I stay behind to manage their property water, their expensive plants, and care for the dog every single day. I looked at the overwhelming demands placed in front of me before firmly refusing the absurd arrangement. "Why me when the whole family is going on vacation?" I asked. My older sister slammed her hand down hard in frustration before glaring at me with absolute entitlement. "That is your role in this house," she snapped sharply. I did not waste another breath trying to argue with people who only saw me as free labor. I stood up from the table, quietly packed my personal belongings, and drove away into the night to escape their suffocating expectations. I honestly thought my firm refusal would finally teach them where my boundaries began. But the very next morning, my phone rang with an unknown caller ID before a stern voice on the other end introduced himself as a police officer. He stated someone had illegally dumped a massive pile of belongings along with a living animal directly blocking my front door. Before I explain the absolute chaos that unfolded next, let me know what the weather is like in your city today. If you have ever been treated like an unpaid servant by the very people who should protect you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the story of how setting one simple boundary forced a toxic family to pay the ultimate price. A frantic knocking mixed with loud canine barking echoed through my apartment the exact moment I ended the call with the police dispatcher. I pulled the front door open to find a uniformed officer standing amidst an unbelievable level of chaos, filling the entire hallway of my gated apartment complex. At least 20 massive potted plants were scattered haphazardly across the carpeted floor of the building. Right in the middle of the spilled dirt and heavy ceramic pots sat a trembling golden retriever tightly chained to my exterior door handle. The poor animal whimpered nervously while trying to untangle itself from the thick metal leash. The officer looked just as perplexed by the bizarre obstacle course completely blocking the communal walkway. He handed me a folded piece of paper adorned with overly neat handwriting I instantly recognized. The note was written by my sister Shelby, detailing a complete fabrication designed to trap me into submission. She had explicitly written that I enthusiastically agreed to take custody of the plants, along with the family dog, right before they boarded their flight to Europe. The deceptive handwritten note was a calculated legal liability carefully disguised as a simple family favor. I did not waste any precious time trying to verbally defend myself against her fabricated story. I unlocked my smartphone immediately to pull up the family group chat from the previous evening. I handed the bright screen directly to the officer so he could read my definitive refusal in black and white. He carefully read the message where I clearly stated I would never accept their ridiculous demands under any circumstances. His expression shifted from mild annoyance to professional concern once he realized this was not a simple miscommunication between relatives. Before the officer could hand my phone back to me, the elevator doors slid open to reveal the head of our homeowners association. The HOA manager marched down the hall with a furious scowl plastered across his face after receiving multiple noise complaints from my frustrated neighbors. He immediately pointed a finger in my direction while threatening to issue a massive financial penalty for deliberately violating the strict community fire codes. He loudly declared that blocking a designated emergency exit route with personal property was grounds for immediate eviction proceedings. "You are receiving a severe penalty for creating this dangerous hazard outside your unit," the manager stated aggressively. "I did not put these items here because my family dumped them completely against my will," I replied calmly. The police officer stepped firmly between us to de-escalate the rising tension before the situation spiraled further out of control. He calmly informed the HOA manager that penalizing me without proper investigation would be highly inappropriate given the textual evidence he had just reviewed. We need to review your main gate security cameras right now to verify who abandoned this property, the officer suggested with undeniable authority. The manager reluctantly agreed to cooperate with the police investigation instead of blindly issuing citations to an innocent resident. They both understood that unauthorized dumping inside a highly regulated Phoenix residential community constituted a serious violation requiring factual documentation. The only remaining issue left to resolve was the frightened animal sitting amidst the scattered soil. The officer explained protocol required him to contact the county animal control department to remove the abandoned dog unless someone took immediate responsibility. I knew sending the dog to a crowded city shelter would be unnecessarily cruel when the poor creature was merely a helpless pawn in their manipulative game. I officially agreed to take the dog inside my apartment temporarily as a documented piece of living evidence. I instructed the officer to explicitly write down in his official report that my action was strictly a temporary preservation of evidence rather than an acceptance of long-term ownership. The officer nodded in agreement while documenting the exact conditions of the hallway, along with my precise stipulations regarding the animal. Pulling the frightened dog inside my quiet apartment gave me a brief moment to process the absolute audacity of my relatives. They truly believed leaving a living creature tied to a door handle would force me to surrender my personal freedom. They severely underestimated my unwavering willingness to involve the legal system to protect my personal boundaries. I poured a bowl of fresh water for the exhausted animal before taking multiple photographs of the chaotic hallway. Every single detail needed to be perfectly documented before the maintenance crew arrived to clear the massive hazard away. At 3 o'clock that same afternoon, I took the dog to the local veterinary clinic for a general health examination after a long night of starvation. The veterinary staff quickly took the dog into the examination room while I waited patiently in the lobby to handle the administrative paperwork. After the veterinarian finished the thorough examination, I walked up to the front desk to settle the medical bill with my personal credit card. The receptionist swiped the plastic card through the machine before looking up at me with a distinctly confused expression. She slid the card back across the counter while turning her computer monitor slightly toward my direction so I could see the screen. Your card was rejected by our system because we received an unconditional payment authorization contract under your name early this morning, she explained politely. I frowned in absolute disbelief while asking her to show me exactly what she was talking about. She handed me a freshly printed document bearing the official letterhead of the veterinary facility, alongside a digitally scanned signature at the bottom. The signature vaguely resembled my own handwriting, but the deliberate strokes were entirely forged by someone else trying to perfectly mimic my name. The document legally bound me to pay for every single potential expense, including long-term luxury pet hotel boarding fees, during the exact time frame my relatives would be overseas. They had maliciously planned this financial trap well in advance to ensure I would be forced to drain my savings to care for their abandoned animal. I carefully inspected the fine print located near the header of the printed email attachment, where a crucial piece of identifying information caught my immediate attention. The submission email address did not belong to a generic public server, but was sent directly from the corporate real estate brokerage domain owned by my brother-in-law Brent. He had foolishly utilized his professional business account to transmit a highly fraudulent legal document across state lines to a medical facility. The sheer arrogance required to commit corporate fraud simply to avoid paying pet care fees was utterly staggering. The overwhelming realization of their calculated betrayal made my hands tremble slightly as I stepped away from the reception desk to make an urgent call. I quickly dialed the phone number of my best friend Morgan to seek some immediate clarity amidst the rising chaos. Morgan listened intently to the entire absurd situation before offering exactly the grounded perspective I desperately needed in that highly stressful moment. She firmly instructed me to calm my breathing and immediately photograph every single piece of paperwork lying on that counter before anyone could tamper with the evidence. Morgan reminded me that catching them committing documented fraud using a corporate email server was the ultimate weapon I needed to permanently sever their toxic control over my life. I ended the brief call with a renewed sense of absolute focus before walking back to the receptionist who was watching the scene unfold with growing concern. I needed to secure an undeniable paper trail before anyone could conveniently delete the digital records from the clinic computer server. Print the entire archived file and that original email out for me, and remember to stamp it with the clinic manager's confirmation, I instructed firmly. The receptionist nodded quickly before fetching the office manager to verify the unprecedented request to secure my personal legal evidence. The manager carefully reviewed the timestamps on the digital submission before applying the official clinic stamp to every single page of the printed packet. I paid the initial examination fee in cash just to ensure the dog received proper medical clearance without linking my personal bank accounts to their fraudulent authorization forms. I gathered the thick stack of authenticated documents into my bag while formulating my next immediate steps to counter their illegal actions. The physical evidence was entirely irrefutable, so I drove straight back to my apartment complex to carefully organize the paperwork. I knew I needed professional guidance to handle this massive violation, so I immediately scheduled an emergency appointment with my lawyer, Marcus. Marcus specialized in civil litigation, and I knew he would know exactly how to weaponize Brent's massive professional blunder against him in a court of law. My family assumed I would quietly accept the financial burden just to keep the peace, but they never anticipated I would gather certified evidence to expose their criminal behavior. Early Monday morning, my smartphone vibrated aggressively with a massive barrage of alert notifications originating directly from our local neighborhood next-door community application. I unlocked the device to discover Shelby had already published a lengthy post playing the tearful victim while enjoying her luxurious European vacation. She blatantly lied to the entire Phoenix-gated community by claiming I heartlessly abandoned their beloved family pet right before their highly anticipated trip. The deceitful post included a deeply pathetic photograph of the dog alongside a direct link to an online fundraising campaign she recently established. Shelby shamelessly begged our neighbors to donate money to help her cover exorbitant emergency pet hotel fees she supposedly incurred due to my sudden betrayal. She strategically painted herself as a desperate mother trying to save her animal from a cruel sister who refused to honor a basic familial commitment. The community outrage initially swelled in her favor until an exceptionally observant neighbor noticed a glaring chronological discrepancy within her fabricated narrative. This particular resident lived directly across the hall from my apartment unit, so they distinctly remembered seeing the chaotic hallway scene unfold. They recalled the exact arrival time of the responding police officer standing next to the massive pile of potted plants blocking the communal walkway. The neighbor typed out a highly analytical comment questioning the physical logistics of Shelby leaving the dog behind while simultaneously boarding an international flight. Their flight took off at 6 a.m, so how was the dog abandoned at 7? There is something extremely illogical happening here, the neighbor pointed out. Several other residents began liking that specific comment as the general community consensus slowly shifted from blind sympathy to genuine suspicion regarding the online fundraiser. People started demanding actual receipts from the supposed pet hotel before they would contribute another dollar to her increasingly questionable financial campaign. I completely ignored the unfolding online drama because arguing with a narcissist on a public forum rarely yields any productive legal results. I gathered the stamped veterinary records along with the official police incident report before driving straight to the downtown office of my civil litigation attorney. I walked into the conference room where Marcus sat waiting to review the mounting pile of physical evidence I had meticulously collected over the weekend. I slid the heavy folder across the polished wooden table so he could examine the forged signature alongside the digital timestamps validating my established timeline. Marcus carefully inspected the veterinary authorization form before focusing his sharp attention entirely on the corporate email header attached to the printed document. He cross-referenced the sender address with the public business registry on his computer monitor to verify the brokerage domain ownership details. Marcus confirmed that Brent explicitly utilizing a professional business server to transmit fraudulent legal documents constituted severe corporate financial fraud under state regulations. The act of sending forged financial authorizations through an official real estate network elevated the entire situation from a petty family dispute into a serious civil liability issue. Using a corporate domain name to send these forged materials is the absolute end of his professional real estate license, Marcus stated confidently. My lawyer immediately began drafting a comprehensive formal complaint containing all the attached evidence to submit directly to the State Real Estate Commission. He explained that licensing boards possess zero tolerance for registered brokers committing identity theft or utilizing company resources to execute personal financial scams. Marcus then instructed his paralegal to contact the Administrative Fraud Department of the online fundraising platform to officially report the deceptive campaign Shelby had created. He provided the corporate administrators with the certified police report detailing the animal abandonment incident to prove the emergency pet hotel fees were entirely fictitious. The financial platform representatives assured his legal office they would freeze the illicitly collected funds pending a thorough internal investigation into the malicious account activity. They also flagged her banking details to prevent her from transferring the stolen community donations into her personal overseas checking accounts. Every single calculated move my family made to trap me financially was now actively triggering a massive legal avalanche destined to crush their reputations completely. They foolishly believed creating a fake public narrative would force me into submission, but they merely provided my legal team with additional documented proof of wire fraud. 10 o'clock Wednesday morning, the main lobby of the building where I work suddenly descended into absolute chaos due to the arrival of an uninvited guest. Brent had apparently delayed his European departure to finalize some local real estate contracts before deciding to ambush my workplace. He marched past the front reception desk wearing a sharp business suit while shouting ridiculous accusations at the startled administrative staff. He loudly claimed I was a mentally unstable employee who had maliciously stolen high-value family property during the weekend. He pointed his finger aggressively toward the elevator bank while demanding immediate disciplinary action from my corporate superiors. She is illegally detaining my property. I demand the Human Resources Department come down here and resolve this immediately, he bellowed across the marble floor. He held his smartphone high in the air with the recording light blinking red to broadcast the entire confrontation directly to his social media followers. He clearly wanted to weaponize public outrage to force my immediate compliance regarding the abandoned animal. He threatened to initiate a massive corporate lawsuit against my employer unless I handed the dog over and withdrew all the formal complaints I had recently filed. The receptionist quickly pressed the silent panic button located under her desk, while multiple employees stopped to watch the bizarre spectacle unfolding near the entrance. The financial risk analysis firm where I worked handled highly sensitive client portfolios, meaning the corporate security protocols were exceptionally strict regarding unauthorized visitors causing disturbances. Brent clearly did not comprehend the magnitude of the secure environment he had just aggressively invaded for his petty social media stunt. I walked out of the ground floor elevator bay completely unbothered by his theatrical public tantrum because I knew exactly how much legal leverage I currently possessed. Instead of cowering or hiding my face from the intrusive camera lens, I calmly signaled the armed building security guards stationed near the security turnstiles. I instructed the guards to stand directly in front of his recording device, while simultaneously locking down the main revolving doors so he could not easily escape. The heavy glass doors clicked shut audibly, sealing him inside the lobby, where his aggressive behavior could be properly documented by the internal surveillance system. The sudden realization that he was physically trapped inside a highly secure corporate facility caused him to lower his phone slightly in obvious confusion. He glanced nervously at the heavily reinforced exits before turning his attention back toward me, hoping to salvage his increasingly disastrous intimidation plan. I stepped forward until I stood just a few feet away from his phone to deliver the crushing reality of his rapidly deteriorating situation. He expected me to beg for privacy, but I maintained steady eye contact while preparing to dismantle his entire professional career in front of my colleagues. Keep recording. This video will be attached to the corporate email fraud file I just sent to the State Real Estate Commission. I stated with absolute clarity. I informed him loudly enough for the witnesses to hear that the licensing board already possessed the stamped veterinary authorization forms proving his immense guilt. I explained how utilizing a professional business server to transmit forged legal documents constituted a severe ethical violation, guaranteed to trigger an immediate license suspension. The arrogant smirk instantly vanished from his pale face as the sheer gravity of his monumental professional blunder finally registered in his panicking brain. He realized his attempt to publicly shame me had only provided my legal team with additional video evidence of his ongoing harassment and intimidation tactics. The devastating reality of losing his entire livelihood over a petty family dispute visibly drained all the aggressive energy straight out of his rigid posture. He stumbled backward slightly while desperately searching for any possible excuse to justify his undeniable criminal actions to the growing crowd of silent onlookers. He fumbled nervously with his smartphone screen to quickly terminate the live broadcast before the security personnel stepped forward to physically restrain his arms. His tough demeanor completely evaporated into pure panic when the head security officer informed him the police were currently en route to handle the trespassing incident. The guards forcefully escorted the panicked real estate broker out of the building in complete disgrace, while he frantically tried to negotiate his immediate release. The high-definition lobby cameras recorded every single second of his humiliating exit, ensuring I possessed irrefutable visual proof to support my impending civil litigation against him. Early the following week, the certified letters dispatched from Marcus began exerting their absolute legal power. The corporate real estate brokerage managing Brent received the extensive fraud report containing the forged veterinary documents sent directly from their official company server. The senior managing partners wasted absolutely no time before issuing a formal administrative decision, suspending Brent from all professional duties, effective immediately. The executives confiscated his corporate access credentials while launching a comprehensive internal investigation to determine the full extent of his unauthorized activities. Utilizing company resources to commit financial identity theft constituted a massive legal liability the prestigious brokerage simply refused to tolerate under any circumstances. Brent lost his primary source of income overnight because he arrogantly assumed his professional status would protect him from the consequences of malicious manipulation. The financial repercussions simultaneously caught up with my relatives, attempting to enjoy their luxurious European vacation across the Atlantic Ocean. The international banking institution managing their primary wealth issued an urgent security notice, temporarily restricting all large transactions across their shared financial accounts. The bank fraud department actively flagged every single credit card belonging to the family after Marcus formally submitted the official police reports. The legal documentation explicitly detailed the forged payment authorizations submitted to the veterinary clinic using my stolen identity. Financial institutions maintain extremely strict protocols regarding active fraud investigations, requiring them to freeze suspicious accounts to prevent further illicit capital flight. The digital landscape surrounding their carefully crafted public image also collapsed when the Nextdoor application administrators intervened decisively. The corporate safety team permanently locked the fraudulent fundraising campaign Shelby had deceitfully established to solicit emergency pet boarding funds from our sympathetic neighbors. The platform moderators took swift administrative action after receiving multiple scam warnings accompanied by the verified police reports confirming the animal abandonment incident. Shelby lost complete access to the accumulated community donations while her online reputation completely disintegrated among the residents who realized she had blatantly lied. The platform sent an automated notification to every single donor explaining the campaign violated their terms of service regarding financial misrepresentation. The sudden loss of financial liquidity overseas triggered a massive wave of panicked communications from Mom alongside Dad, who were currently stranded without functional currency. They flooded my personal inbox with frantic messages demanding immediate assistance after discovering their sudden inability to purchase basic necessities or pay their hospitality bills. One particularly aggressive electronic message from Mom contained a highly demanding tone, completely ignoring their own malicious actions orchestrating the entire ordeal. "My credit card was declined at the hotel, so you need to call the bank to resolve this issue right now," she demanded arrogantly. They foolishly attempted to utilize intense emotional blackmail to force my compliance by playing the desperate victims of a situation they entirely manufactured. They expected me to drop everything to rescue them from the severe financial limitations triggered directly by their own illegal forgery scheme. I flatly refused to acknowledge their desperate demands or justify my defensive actions to people who consistently viewed my personal boundaries as a minor inconvenience. I methodically forwarded every single manipulative message directly to Marcus so his paralegal team could catalog the digital correspondence. The legal team required these frantic communications to build a robust evidentiary foundation for the upcoming civil court proceedings against the entire family. Marcus reviewed the aggressive demands before providing strict legal counsel regarding my continued lack of direct communication with the perpetrators. "Do not reply to any of their emails because everything they write right now is beneficial evidence for us," he instructed clearly over the phone. I followed his professional advice flawlessly by maintaining a wall of absolute silence, while they continued sending increasingly unhinged emails from their European hotel lobby. The sheer desperation radiating from their electronic correspondence proved they were finally experiencing the terrifying reality of losing total control over my life. They were entirely isolated in a foreign country facing the severe consequences of their own arrogance without their usual financial safety nets available. I spent the remainder of the week organizing my new daily routine around caring for the rescued dog while letting the legal machinery systematically dismantle their remaining leverage. The undeniable proof of their systemic fraud completely shattered the illusion of familial authority they had weaponized against me for decades. Late Sunday afternoon, 4 weeks later, the familiar sports utility vehicle crept sluggishly into the driveway of the Phoenix gated community. My parents organized a small casual gathering in the front communal courtyard immediately after returning from their disastrous overseas trip. They desperately attempted to spin a fabricated narrative to save their crumbling reputation among the highly judgmental neighborhood residents who demanded answers. Shelby stood near the communal barbecue grill while pouring drinks for the confused neighbors who had previously donated to her fraudulent online campaign. She forced a bright smile while actively trying to downplay the sudden disappearance of her fundraising account alongside the freezing of their financial assets. She claimed the platform experienced a temporary technical glitch while assuring everyone their generous donations were perfectly safe within a secure banking vault. Dad stood beside her while confidently telling the gathered crowd a completely fictitious story about overseas banking errors to hide their humiliating reality. He aggressively blamed an incompetent international banking teller for locking their credit cards, instead of admitting the fraud department flagged their illegal activities. I did not arrive at the courtyard gathering alone because I was professionally escorted by a licensed court process server holding a thick stack of manila envelopes. We walked straight into the middle of the crowded social event without offering any prior warning or polite greetings to my startled relatives. The casual conversations immediately died down as the neighborhood residents turned their attention toward the unexpected disruption interrupting the weekend gathering. Shelby dropped her plastic cup onto the grass, while Brent instinctively took a nervous step backward after recognizing the serious demeanor of the official server. Brent had dealt with legal couriers throughout his real estate career, so he instantly recognized the distinctive rigid posture of a professional court messenger. The atmosphere shifted from fake hospitality to overwhelming tension as the crowd parted slightly to allow the stranger direct access to the hosting family. Everything was just a minor misunderstanding with the bank, but we have already resolved the entire situation, Dad announced loudly to the crowd in a desperate attempt to maintain control. The process server completely ignored his pathetic attempt at damage control before stepping directly in front of my sister and her panicked husband. The official representative held the thick envelopes out while maintaining a loud professional volume designed to carry across the silent courtyard for everyone to hear. He verified their identities using the physical descriptions provided by my legal team to ensure the delivery met all strict judicial requirements. Are you Shelby and Brent? This is an official summons from the civil court regarding allegations of financial fraud and animal abandonment, the server stated clearly. He pressed the heavy legal documents firmly against their chests before stepping back to officially conclude the formal delivery process. The neighbors who had previously read the deceptive next-door post gasped audibly, while immediately whispering amongst themselves regarding the severe criminal allegations they had just witnessed. The shocking revelation that the fundraising campaign was an intentional financial scam entirely shattered the fragile facade my family had spent the afternoon trying to rebuild. People began connecting the dots regarding the abandoned dog alongside the frozen accounts, while glaring accusingly at the deceitful couple standing frozen on the grass. A few residents who had donated significant amounts of money demanded immediate refunds while threatening to contact the local authorities to report the blatant theft. The overwhelming sense of social awkwardness permeated the courtyard until the gathered residents began creating rapid excuses to leave the embarrassing situation. They grabbed their personal belongings before practically sprinting toward their respective apartment units to escape the incoming legal fallout surrounding my toxic relatives. The mass exodus left Dad, Mom, Shelby, alongside Brent standing completely paralyzed in the middle of the empty lawn clutching the legal paperwork. Mom covered her mouth in absolute horror, while Brent stared blankly at the civil lawsuit detailing his imminent professional destruction inside the real estate industry. I did not offer them a single word of sympathy or explanation before turning around to walk back toward my own apartment unit. They finally experienced the devastating public humiliation they originally intended to inflict upon me when they chained a defenseless animal to my front door. The legal consequences of their malicious actions were now officially unavoidable because the court system would not tolerate their manipulative emotional abuse anymore. 9 o'clock Friday morning, the sterile civil courtroom offered absolutely no tolerance for theatrical crying or playing the pathetic victim. Marcus sat confidently beside me while organizing the massive stack of stamped veterinary documents alongside the official police reports we gathered over the past month. Brent nervously adjusted his expensive suit before frantically attempting to justify his corporate fraud to the presiding judge. He ridiculously claimed he mistakenly borrowed a company computer during a momentary lapse in judgment while trying to assist his wife with a simple pet boarding application. Shelby immediately turned against her husband by loudly blaming him for orchestrating the entire financial trap because she wanted to completely avoid paying the impending monetary fines. The judge stared sternly down at the arguing couple before firmly silencing their pathetic attempts to shift the blame onto each other. The presiding magistrate firmly rejected their absurd defensive arguments before officially stripping Brent of his professional real estate brokerage license permanently. The judge explicitly emphasized that utilizing a corporate server to execute identity theft demonstrated a severe lack of professional ethics entirely unsuitable for the real estate industry. The court simultaneously ordered Shelby to pay massive financial restitution, including full coverage of my extensive legal fees resulting from her online fundraising scam. She was also ordered to return every single dollar she illicitly collected from the Next Door community campaign back to the original donors immediately. My parents sat silently in the back row of the gallery watching their favored children face the devastating legal consequences of their own malicious arrogance. They finally realized their lifelong habit of enabling toxic behavior had ultimately destroyed the financial stability of the family they proudly flaunted. The magistrate then reviewed the original police documentation detailing the hazardous hallway incident before officially revoking their legal ownership rights over the abandoned animal completely. The court formally transferred full legal custody of the dog directly to me after acknowledging my diligent efforts to secure emergency veterinary care during the crisis. I finalized the necessary adoption paperwork with the local authorities before moving into a completely different residential community to permanently sever all physical ties with my toxic relatives. I blocked every single phone number associated with my parents, alongside my sister, to ensure they could never contact me again under any circumstances. I officially named the rescued golden retriever Duke, while finally closing the darkest chapter of my life to embrace a genuinely peaceful future free from their manipulative control. They lost their professional careers along with their social standing simply because they refused to respect the basic personal boundaries I established on that very first night. Representing the Revenge Mode channel, we produced this fictionalized story strictly for educational purposes to convey powerful messages about establishing personal boundaries. We sincerely hope this engaging narrative demonstrates how handling severe family crises through logic alongside legal action remains highly effective. Kelsey decisively protected herself by documenting irrefutable evidence and establishing absolute legal boundaries rather than engaging in pointless emotional arguments. She successfully severed all ties with her toxic relatives to guarantee her personal peace. The antagonists ultimately suffered the severe professional, alongside financial consequences, resulting directly from their own manipulative decisions. Here are the core lessons we can draw from this story. Standing up to protect yourself against the people sharing your bloodline is never an easy decision, but it remains an absolute necessity for your survival. You must establish firm boundaries because biological relation does not grant anyone the right to exploit your kindness. You hold absolutely no obligation to sacrifice your personal life or financial stability to clean up the disastrous consequences created by the selfish choices of others. You must prioritize your own well-being over their unreasonable demands. Establishing crystal-clear boundaries utilizing the legal system is never an act of cruelty, but rather the only effective method to terminate a cycle of exploitation disguised as family love. Thank you sincerely for patiently listening to this story until the very final moment today, because we truly appreciate your continued support. Confronting emotional manipulation from your own family is always a lengthy, alongside incredibly painful journey, requiring immense courage. Have you ever utilized extreme measures to protect yourself from your own relatives? Please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts regarding this complex issue.